I wrote some things down so I wouldn't go over. Okay. Uh, my name is Felicia Gale. I have been in Norma Her Women's Center since February 18th of this year due to domestic violence. I noticed right away everything there was not agreeable, but at least the bathrooms looked clean enough to use. I didn't have to worry about infections or bacteria because the bathrooms were cleaned thoroughly for me to have good sanitary conditions to use. There were some toilet tissue to use and a clean stalls to shower in. When July came, the first 5 days, I noticed the hallways being dirty and the bathroom showers and curtains beginning to have mold on them. So I noticed the cleaning company changed. I asked staff, do they supposed to clean the shower stalls and curtains? Staff was not sure, but said yes. For the last 2 weeks, it has been getting worse. Some of the shower curtains were replaced, but the shower stalls now have more mold in them. There is hair, dirt, ring, and mold around the bottom of the shower stalls. The toilets have dried human feces upon them in the inner ring of the toilets. There is no tissue in the dispensers, and the floors continuously smell like human waste. I started to get fungus growing on my feet, so I now have anxiety about getting in the shower stalls to take a shower. I fear of mold particles being breathed into my lungs and causing health problems for me. When I looked up exposure to mold and seeing bleeding lungs and coughing up blood, I chose not to take a shower every day, but take a shower twice a week and wear a mask in the shower. I asked staff if I could bring in some bleach to clean. I was told no. So what are my options now? I am a vegetarian. I cannot get vegetarian meals to eat unless I have a doctor note to eat vegetables. Now I cannot eat properly for my health. I cannot take a clean shower for my health. So what am I supposed to do? I have no other place to go for the time being. I fear of my health and safety. I am here trying to find a solution to solving this problem. Do you have any suggestions?
Okay, thank you. This format is not where you respond, where we respond, but I
Okay.
can direct you to our chief of staff, and they can help, and then we can help you through that process.
Okay, thank you.
Joseph Nani. Andrea, is anyone else signed in for public comment?
No, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, we have one item referred to committee today. This is our microgrid item, and Mr. Foley, if you would come forward and present,
Mr. President, may I read the item into the record?
please do, Andrea.
Ordinance 2021-0003, amending Section 202.04 of the Cuyahoga County Code to establish a Division of Public Utilities within the Department of Public Works.
Thanks. Thanks, Andrea. Thanks, Council President. And today's we're back in front of you for the county utility proposal. Just to reiterate that this is a proposal that would give the county the authority to create local microgrids in geographic areas throughout the county and do electric utility work, basically, in those microgrids. So we've had 3 or 4 hearings. I didn't bring a PowerPoint presentation. I think I've given you thousands of documents and probably way too many things for you to read. But the question that was raised was, do we have the legal authority to proceed with, as a county, to do this? So we had a couple of opinions from both our law department and the Legislative Service Commission. Councilman Gallagher rightly asked the Attorney General to weigh in on the issue whether there was conflict or not between municipalities and the county if we were to create a county utility. The Attorney General is now opined, and they've sent out an opinion a couple weeks ago now, a week and a half ago. And the gist of it, I think, is, and I'm hoping everyone will agree with this, is that we can proceed assuming we get agreements with the cities that we're working in. So if we're working in Brooklyn, or if we're working in the Arizona area and Fairview Park and Berea and Brook Park or Solon, that we have agreements with those cities to operate a microgrid in those communities. So I mean, that's, I think, our interpretation. I've talked to the law department, they agree with that. I think we've talked to council staff, I think, who agree with that interpretation. And as such, we talked to your staff about putting together an amendment, which is in the substitute version of the document, that basically says that we would do that. So that 2 things. One is the Director of Public Works. One is that municipalities would consent, basically, to allowing us to operate a microgrid or allow the utility to operate in their municipality. And 2 is that the county would agree to that too, and that the county council would agree to that. So that's where we're at today. Greg, I don't know if there's as law director, if I'm missing anything or anything you want to add. But I think we're more than willing to take questions.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think he did generally summarize the AG's opinion correctly. I think it answered the one kind of open question we had when we issued our opinion about whether there's a conflict here. And the AG has determined that there is, so it requires the consent of the community that the county would intend to operate this microgrid in. I look at the amendment or the substitute a little bit differently. I think it makes it clear that this amendment to our county code does not give blanket authority to do anything. Any agreements with the communities or with developers or anything has to come back through this process. We just want to be sure that that was very clear as this project moves forward.
Hearing is legislatively, we can move forward, but the cities must move legislation or enter into a contractual agreement. Is there a distinction?
Mr. Chairman, from my experience, there is not. There would have to be legislation on the part of the municipality that we would intend to work with.
With that in place, then we could move forward with any city that we enter into that legislative understanding.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. And that makes sense to us. I mean, we're fine with that. So.
Are there any questions from the committee? Councilman Schron.
Why don't we go the other way and get the various cities to let us know if they're going to put legislation forward through the mayor or through the executive branch over there, to at least to find out, and then find out what the legislative intent would be from these various cities.
Councilman Schron, and Greg will let you ahead and jump into, but I think we want them to be able to agree to something. I mean, we have to have something created for them to agree with. I think that's your question, is that they would act first and then...
No, just at least get some kind of legislative intent as far as whether they even want to entertain the conversation, because up to this point, they have not even been participant. And I assume they're going to do the same thing that we just did. They're going to want presentations. They're going to want to get information. They're going to want to get liability risks. They're going to want to get exposure. They're going to want to get what ifs. They're going to want to get the same uptime confirmation questions that we asked. There's nothing that I believe that we heard is not something that all those bodies, if they don't, then I think they're missing their legislative and their fiduciary responsibilities if they don't do every single thing that we just did.
And
Or they ever, and until we find that out, why on earth would we want to go out and pursue X number of communities if we don't know where those communities, where the final interest is?
yeah, Councilman Sharon, I think we've got a lot of interest from communities already, so.
Then prove it. By making the presentations, go through this. I mean, why wouldn't they want exactly the same thing that this body heard?
Well, they probably will, but and I'm willing to go do the presentations to them, but we've already talked to a number of mayors throughout the community who are interested in this project, who want to see microgrids in their community. So but I think they want to see us act first so that there's something to contract with, right? So that we've got something official on the books that they can make an agreement with, so that they see that we've got the intent already at the county level. I would hate to have to go and do kind of presentations to all the cities throughout the county and then come back to you and ask for authority to create the utility. It seems to me to make sense for us to create the utility first and then work with the cities. And look, and I've had a number of conversations with mayors throughout the county who are already interested in this. We had Mayor Gallagher from Brooklyn who
Do they include
who
the
came
city
in.
of Cleveland, where you had a number of these already targeted?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, look, they've got their own utility, right? And I'm hoping that we still work something out with them. It's not been the easiest process, as you know, right? So, but we will, we're still grinding through with them, and hopefully we'll get a deal done with them. But we'll have to have an agreement with them, correct?
But my impression was that before, when we were asking these questions, you said we could do this regardless of the city of Cleveland, and early on in testimony, that we thought we could do it without consent from them.
Well, if we're working in Brook Park or Brooklyn, we don't need the consent of the city of
I'm
Cleveland.
not talking about that. My question was about the city of Cleveland. Because that's where the original
City of
concept,
Cleveland.
I thought, was
Right.
to go into, the zone right where the Cleveland Clinic, or the Cleveland Foundation was.
Foundation,
And
so
that was
you
going to
could
be
do
the
it.
hub for the very first one.
You could help the Cleveland Foundation with their innovation zone doing behind the meter project. The county utility could do that. So it's behind the meter. It's not in front of the meter. It's not interacting with the implementation of devices that would be rooftop solar or energy efficiency products or backup batteries. A county utility could help with that project in the Cleveland Foundation footprint. Would not have to get approval from CPP for that work.
Would that require this to be done? This, what you're asking the council to do right now? To do the solar panels and all that? I didn't think it would.
So it'd be a project in the city of Cleveland, right? I think that I have to go back and think about that. So would we have to come, any project we've said we would work on, we would come back to council, for our county council, for approval on.
But that would not be a microgrid.
Be somewhat of a microgrid, a smart grid microgrid. It wouldn't have interaction into the larger transmission grid, right? So, but it could have enough backup battery and local generation, so if the larger power grid went down, it could keep power on for a number of hours, potentially up to a day. It depends on how large the devices were that we put inside the facility.
Mr. President? Thank you so much. Council, just to remember that we are simply embedding the utility in our code. We are not doing anything other than that which is before us. We do have a substitute. I'd like to move to have the substitute under consideration.
There's been a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded. Any further discussion, any questions? Councilwoman?
Thank you, and good to see we got the answer and we're no longer in limbo. Is there any downside to what we're doing in changing this proposed substitute? Is there any downside to what we were doing compared to what we're now doing because of the ruling?
No, Councilwoman, I don't think so. I think we'd always envisioned we're going to need approval from cities we're working in. I mean, if someone's going to bid on this project as a developer, they're going to want to know that the city that we're working in is embedded in this, right? And, our impression was they could opt out, right? Now it's kind of this opt-in provision. So we're fine with this, and there's no downside.
And also, a provision that's added is that any agreement, including agreements with the municipalities, needs to come before us. So we would see you back again if you were to put a microgrid in a community. You agreed, everything's, but you still would have to come back here.
That's correct. Correct.
And my third question is there, from previous conversations we've had about the microgrid, is there any cost to the county?
There'll be some upfront costs, but as we've talked about, that those costs will be reimbursed from the developer.
Is there any cost beyond reimbursement down the road for any reason at all that we would have to come up with dollars?
Yeah, look, we're going to have we'll have legal fees up front. We're going to have we'll have consultant fees. The Public Works Department will have an administrator for the program, right? So, but when we do the RFPs, embedded in those RFPs is you have to pay for our cost to run the program.
If I may, is the administrator a full-time administrator solely devoted to this?
I think so. I think it'll be a full-time position. I know it'll be a full-time position. Yeah, we'll need someone full-time. This is going to be, we want someone who's smart, who understands kind of electricity grid, who understands the kind of almost an electrical engineer in some respects, who understands the whole transmission aspects of this stuff. So I think we're going to need someone who's full-time.
So do you, if I may, do you have an expectation of this administrator to produce? And, I mean, what's your goal? We hire someone, we now have a green light, we know what the parameters are. What can we expect a year from now, paying an administrator, a new position? What is it that you expect him to come back with when we are a year into this?
Yeah, so a year in, I would expect that we've hired a developer, that we've identified 3 to 4 different sites, right? We've hired a developer, that the administrator is kind of overseeing how it's all working out. There will be agreements we need to make with, municipalities, obviously. There will be, there's this whole kind of transmission access issues that we'll have to do. There'll be some reporting with, back to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, things like that. So kind of just putting together the whole process. A lot of it will be done by the developer, right, who will be giving us information, but we need someone in charge.
So a year from now, when we sit here in July of next year, we hope to have 3 to 4 sites, perhaps know what 3 to 4 cities are engaged, and a microgrid that's been proposed in those cities already. All that should be done within a year to help support that administrator that we're paying for.
Yeah, the goal is we're going to need to, so just be clear, we need to write the RFP for the developer, right? That'll take 6 to 8 months, and we'll hire a consultants to help put that together. We'll put that out for bid. So let's say that gets out, we get authority, and whenever we get the authority this fall, hopefully, that the RFP goes out for the developer. It may take 6 to 8 months to make a choice on who that developer is. But we've got those 3 to 4 sites, and we've got a developer chosen. We've got a path forward on moving forward.
When you say 3 to 4 sites, does that mean 3 to 4 cities have shown interest and are engaged? Is that?
I'm thinking 3 to 4 microgrids. So, just the Arizona alone has maybe 3 to 4 cities in it, but we're looking at, Euclid as an example, or Brook Park, or Solon, or where the Sherwin-Williams facility is in Brook. Thank you.
All right, well, good. It is exciting. Just wondering what's your goal and what we can expect a year from now when we talk to you, that we're not in the same place that we are today. What is the expected pay for that administrator? Have we determined that?
Oh, I think it'll be 6 figures or low 6 figures. So, I think there's, someone's going to need to have some pretty good chops at this.
Okay.
Councilman Sweeney.
Thanks, Joe. I apologize for not having my button pressed. When you said you had to bring back to council, what are you bringing back to us to consider?
Two things. One is there will be an agreement with the city, so let's say it's the city of Brooklyn or something, right? So they'll have passed their own ordinance, and then we need to agree that, we will cooperate, work with them on a microgrid in their city. And then secondly, let's say we've got a project in Brooklyn too. So we've got we've done an RFP for a developer to build out a microgrid in Brooklyn. So that would be a separate piece of legislation that you guys would have to approve.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, may I continue with two more? Thank you. Just when you, if this passes today, which I anticipate, will you start the process of engaging other communities immediately before the developer has been chosen through the 8-month process?
Oh, sure, yeah. Yes, Councilman Sweeney. So we've got a lot of interest already, right? And as we, let's assume we get. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, right? So,
A simple answer is yes is fine. I'm just trying
yes,
to
we will.
understand
Of
the
course,
sequence.
yeah. So there's another 5 or 6 logical sites right up front, but there's more out there that we know that we can take advantage of with this county utility. So yes.
And thank you. And the last question is, slipping my mind, on the potential developer, when it passes. And, the developer, you say you're going to choose one developer that's going to have a contract with the city and do all the proposed microgrids in
county,
the area?
right,
Or
yeah.
is it going to be
I think
in partnership with the municipality saying we might want our own developer because we think they're good? How would that work?
Yeah, so, Councilman, I think we want one developer just for kind of scale, so I think there's going to be more interest if we've got, 3 projects right up front that encompass 3 or 4 different geographic areas. So, and then we would have agreements with those cities that would be embedded into the RFP that goes out, so the developer knows that these cities are, engaged in this, right? Or, they want to see this happen. So I think that.
Yeah, exactly what I needed here. I just didn't
Yeah.
know if the local community could have their own preference for a developer, but it's not even going to be an option as you move through the discussions with them.
And as we put together the RFP process, maybe we ask them to participate in scoring, things like that. I haven't thought that far ahead, to be honest with you yet, but that's a possibility, right?
Okay, thank you. Thank you,
But
Mr. Chairman.
Would it be our RFP, the county's RFP for the developer?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. To be a little bit more clear for Mr. Schrein, you can go out and approach cities. Cities can approach us. They have to opt in. So it's, if anything, the opinion got us was no more of this. If you don't like it, opt out. That was in the base of the opinion. So at least we got that out of them. But we got a clear path forward that if we wanted to do this, the city itself would have to opt in. So obviously they're interested and they want to participate. By doing that, they're abdicating their right to have a utility, to have that electric utility, which many cities will do. Cleveland, I don't think so. That might be a question down the line, because there's no way they're giving up CPP for anything, really. So if there's something we do with CPP down the line that's legal without them giving up or abdicating their position with CPP, it gets a little hairy, but I don't think we're there yet. So you might want to keep that in your back pocket. But Brooklyn, Euclid, Solon, they would be opting in, so they would clearly understand their position, and their chances of starting a utility, regardless of what kind, is pretty slim.
The only thing I say to that, Councilman, is I think Cleveland has CPP, and we could cooperate with them, right? I think there's cooperative agreements that we could sign with CPP to help develop microgrids or help do, other work in the city of Cleveland. So I don't think we're precluded from working in Cleveland just because they've got their own utility. I think that there's, I think cities sign cooperative agreements all the time to do work, so.
And that's probably likely, but CPP would be getting, if there's a benefit, they're going to get it, not the county. So they by rights could be doing this on their own. And my guess is they're watching what we do, and if it's going to make sense, they're going to be out there doing Sherwin-Williams and the Aerozone, because you're going to have four communities out there wanting to participate. One, being Cleveland, may be out of luck if they can't. So I don't know how we get that project going if you have 3 out of the 4, but the big dog wanting to get in can't get in. So maybe down the line, we look at that as a question, can we legally do that? And that's, again, that's way down the line.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
I appreciate it.
Councilwoman Conwell.
Thank you. Through the president, to Mr. Foley, can you refresh my memory? You said the cost for the county regarding legal fees and employees, is that going to come out of the Public Works budget?
So we've got money in the sustainability fund that can cover it. We've also made a request to Senator Brown for, if this goes forward, can we get an earmark for $300,000 to help with some of these costs? And so as Senator Brown works through the earmark process, he's thinking, assuming we get the utility passed, that this may be something that he would support with an earmark.
And what's your budget for your department now?
So for we think for the first couple years, it'll be with consulting fees, legal fees, and administrator, $600,000. And then the idea is that those dollars get recouped from the developer at the end of the day.
Okay, but you stated to Councilwoman Baker that we would have some ongoing costs, correct?
We'll have an ongoing administrative cost.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just to make sure I understand too, so the administrative costs, is that the 300,000 that you're talking about? That is probably our upfront cost that will not be reimbursed? Is that what you're figuring in your budget?
No, that would be reimbursed. So that's going to be, we're going to need an electrical engineer. We're going to need, we're going to need legal assistance. I'm putting, the RFP together. We're going to need someone kind of just gets the kind of whole milieu of, electricity markets, right, to help us put all that.
Budget on that will not be reimbursed?
No, that would be reimbursed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all we have is the administrator and legal fees?
And electrical, and the consulting cost up front, so that to help us put the RFP together.
Right. Well, anything that's being reimbursed, I think I put in another category. The ongoing cost for the county that will.
It'd be the administrator, right?
The Department of Development, are they involved in this process?
Mm-hmm.
I know this is going into Public Works, administrators going into Public Works, but Department of Development certainly will play a pretty big role. How much conversation have you had, and are they in lockstep with you?
Yeah, no, it's Paul. I don't know if Paul's here, but we did a whole hearing on just kind of the economic development aspects of this, and so Paul's been kind of development's been part and parcel of this for a while now.
To the councilwoman, with the chair's permission, just want to confirm we're working very closely. We see this as an important economic development activity, and we're working very closely with sustainability.
Okay, I know it's in your 5-year plan. I just was curious to know how engaged you are, or if you're on kind of there as a consultant if called upon, or.
To the councilwoman, we would say as the economic development folks, we are absolutely engaged in working with companies and cities that wish to take advantage of this, especially from the point of view of advocating for this as an business attraction tool, as well as business retention. We leave the technical details to the experts, but we absolutely weigh in on the economic development side.
Good. Thank you for reinforcing that. I appreciate it. And I too am more comfortable with the opt-in given by the Attorney General, so that I think that's good. It shows that that city has to be engaged in order to move forward.
Mr. President? Sure, thank you so much. I was as well going to bring up our 5-year economic development plan, that the grid is wholly consistent with the business growth, retention, and also the strategy to address climate change at the same time, that we have expressed certain items that we're going to look at as part of our plan, and this is going to be a huge part of that. And, I just want to say thank you to everybody. This is, I'm telling you, this is a big deal for businesses. Business in Euclid testified at our committee hearing. The outages are costly to businesses, and this definitely is something that we're going to be leaders, not only in the state, but Northeast Ohio. And I think this will get us on the map as, our goal to bring jobs back here. This is certainly a tool, and if we spend money on an administrator, that's money well spent, as we have spent millions of dollars as part of our economic development plans with loans, grants, all kinds of incentives that come out of Department of Development. This is just one other aspect of that. So and if it's going to cost a little more, sometimes we need to do that to make things work at a higher scale it up. So thank you, and I'm excited about this, and I understand that you're not holding to any firm goal timeline, are you, Ms. Director Foley?
Well, Councilwoman, we would like to get this RFP out and choose the developer by next year, right? So, and, identify those first 3 or 4 projects by, that are in that RFP by the beginning of 2022, I think. So, yeah, so I would hope that by the end of summer of next year, by this time next year, we'll have those 3 or 4 projects identified, a developer identified, and kind of a path. We're going to need the developer to help us figure out what the path is, for the next steps are, but hopefully we're at that stage by next year.
And could it be, Director Foley, that with the new leadership in the city of Cleveland, that perhaps we could even have an opportunity to move forward in Cleveland as we originally had looked at?
I'm not going to opine on the leadership of Cleveland, but I do think that there is I have talked to some of the candidates who are interested in the microgrid idea. So, we'll see. Hopefully,
opportunities abound. Thank you.
Thank you. I too was there at those hearings, but I don't recall a single company saying that they're willing to pay more money for it, including the Euclid company that was referenced out there. And Sherwin-Williams, I think when asked, would you pay more money for the microgrid, they answered no. They didn't. They were not signing on for the additional cost of that. Could you refresh my memory as to which companies actually spoke that way? Because as I recall, the Naval Yards, when we brought in one of the experts, said that they could not find, after 10 years, even one company that was interested in going forward with the microgrid. They had a smart grid, but not a microgrid. Just refresh my memory as to which companies they were.
So in Euclid, it was PP&G and MD&A. And just so you know, I got an email from, I forget which one, but they just had another power outage last week, and they lost a day's work of both workers and product, so they're anxious. I think I think they said they'd have to see what the prices were, right? So if it's 150% of what they're paying now, then then they may not do it. But as I've talked to you guys about, I think that because we're not subject to the distribution costs of FirstEnergy, the distribution utility, there's about that 25 to 30% delta that we have to play with, and we can get access to power we're not using from our local generation source or backup battery. We get wholesale power from the transmission market. So we think we can get, in terms of the cost of power, parity to what people are paying right now. So it's roughly the same cost, give or take a little bit, with a lot more resiliency. It's not going to go down.
With all these subcommunities now signing individual relationships out there, do you believe that anybody will ever ask about a hold harmless? I know you said that no one would get a hold harmless from us. Is there any risk that a hold harmless is going to come into play when you're talking about a business that signs up with the expectation, and if they were in medical or electronics or something of that nature, and they lose they lose a hiccup on that and lose products or services as a result of it?
From a company, not from the city, you're talking about from the
from the company, sure, because the company's the one who's ultimately the one paying the bill. No city pays this bill. It's always coming from the individual.
So I think as we talked about before, and I'll defer to our audit department, but that we'll
can't-
build into the contracts with the developers liability, that they hold the liability for any failures of the product, basically. Greg and.
No, I'm sorry,
Rebecca.
that's correct. I mean, this is something we just can't do.
I get that. But the
that's-
cities that are now, we're now getting them to opt in on the individual cities at this point in time. And under this, at least the Attorney General's opinion looked like. And whether or not they ask that, if I'm on their side, I'm going to be asking that question if I'm a city.
With all due respect, Councilman, the cities I've worked with, they know that local governments can't do this. So the cities aren't, they're not going to ask us to do something they know they can't do.
On behalf of their client. Okay.
Mr. President?
Councilwoman?
Just a reminder to colleagues that were here at the beginning of this new body when we established the Western Reserve Fund, as it was called at the time. We didn't know who was going to be participating in that. We didn't know the parameters, but we certainly moved quickly to be consistent with the charter that provides for economic growth as a focal point of the new government. We moved forward with these programs before we even knew who would be participating, who would be paying, how it would get done. We spent time developing programs and we watched them grow and change. This is no different. I don't know why now we have to have certainty and such things as we sit here before us. While 10 years ago, we certainly moved quickly to make sure that we had a safety net and a development plan for businesses in the community. This is no different. So I encourage everybody to continue on with this mode of thinking and providing support for cities, providing support for the county, and being there to move forward. And that's what a charter mandate says we need to do. And I think this is a time to get into the next, mode of sustainability and catch up with the rest of the world because, we've been lagging behind.
Further questions? Councilwoman Baker?
If I'm understanding this correctly, we have the opportunity to ask those questions about holding harmless when you bring us back that actual city
Correct.
that is engaged. That city will tell us who that potential or perhaps already written company is, what the agreements are, and if the hold harmless was a consideration discussed so all of that would come out, wouldn't it, at the time?
It'll come out, Councilwoman, it'll come out at the time when we bring the projects to you. So the agreements with the cities are just those agreements with the cities. The cities are saying that, hey, county utility, you can operate in our city, right? The city's not going to say, hey, we've got, you're going to, we've got 4 companies we want you to work with in this area over here we want you to help develop. So they're just going to say you can operate in the city. But when we bring the projects, that's when
So as the
those questions
projects
will be
come
asked.
to us, that is
Correct.
the opportunity to make sure that hold harmless clause has been dealt with. Is that
That's
fair?
correct. Mhm.
Councilman Gallagher?
Just quickly, you're talking about hiring outside counsel. Bring the prosecutor in on this. That's what he does, so I don't get yelled at anymore.
Okay, Councilman.
Any further questions?
As a final note, Mr. President, I have to say that I'm disappointed in the AG's opinion to the extent that my understanding and our whole history of the charter government is that it's an opt-out analysis, and it was, I believe, a little bit not surprising, but disappointing that we now have, in this particular case, an opt-in, which has been the opposite of all the legal analysis of what it exactly means to be a charter government and having that ability to govern and pass laws countywide. So this is a change in that it allows us to go forward, but I'm not sure about the precedent setting of this particular opinion.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I want to be clear, and this is a quote from the opinion. This opinion is limited to analyzing situations in which a county lacks explicit approval from a municipality to operate a county electric utility. So this opinion in the opt-in concept is limited to this series of a set of facts that the AG reviewed. And I think on a larger, more fundamental basis, this isn't like a law that we're passing. This isn't a regulation that we're passing. This is a service that we're offering. So the concepts are two very different things.
Thank you for the clarity.
Thank you. I hope that's correct.
So do I.
Any further comments or discussion? All right. We've had a motion and a second, and we have had our discussion again on the proposed substitute. All those in favor of accepting the proposed substitute, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, the substitute is approved. At this time, do we have a motion? Greg, did you want to say something? Okay. All right. At this time, do we have a motion?
A motion to,
I will make a motion, with the proposed substitute, I will make the motion to refer this item, 2021-003 to the full council agenda, for consideration for second reading.
second.
Second, any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Ayes have it. Our ordinance is, will be moved to the full council. All right, is there any miscellaneous business? If not, if nothing else holds our attention, our meeting is now adjourned. We will reconvene at 5 o'clock for our full council